Hey guys, how's it going? Danconia, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Hangzhou Spark preview. So the Hangzhou Spark did actually very well last season. They're a team that, everyone really liked coming into the league because the pink and white colour scheme, the pink, white and blue. Everyone really liked the Hangzhou Spark's colour scheme, and that kind of got them a lot of fans to begin with without even having played a game. But coming into the 2019 season, we saw a lot of promising stuff from Hangzhou Spark. Their stage 1 was slightly slow, but when they found their feet and moved into the rest of the season, they did manage to reach 2 of the 3 stage playoffs throughout the season, stages 2 and 3. There were no stage playoffs in stage 4, although if there had been, they would have reached them as well. So they were constant high finishers during the stages, and this meant that they were able to seal themselves a 4th place finish in the league last season, which is really, really good. That's above the likes of our inaugural champions London, that's above the likes of, well, every other new team apart from Vancouver, and I don't think anyone expected Hangzhou to be above Vancouver. They were the leaders of the chasing pack that were going after New York Excelsior, San Francisco Shurk and the Titans, so it was a really good season for the Hangzhou Spark last season. So can they build on that? And that's the thing here. It's very difficult to build on that because at the moment, or if you go on 2019 anyway, there's a big gap between 3rd and 4th because that's where you see New York Excelsior and Hangzhou Spark, right? And then there's kind of a gap between New York Excelsior and the top 2. So the thing is, all these teams below them, and this includes the likes of the Gladiators as well, they've got to find a way to close that gap on the New York Excelsior, the San Francisco Shock and the Vancouver Titans. And that's not going to be easy. The question is, have Hangzhou Spark made some changes that will get them up there? So, Hangzhou Spark will come into the season and they haven't made too many changes. So they've still got the core roster of Gujue, Adora, Rhea, Bazzi, Godsby, IDK, Bebe and Sassin. They've added 2 players to that roster, and that is Coldest and Mika, which I believe it is said Mika even though it's a 1 instead of an I. They're both Chinese, coming from Chinese Contenders and the academy team of the Hangzhou Spark, which is Bilibili Gaming in Chinese Contenders if you didn't know. So Mika is 19, obviously a support, and he plays the Mercy and the Lucio. I think this is a really good depth addition to the Hangzhou Spark, and then Coldest obviously is also in a support who will work really well with Mika, coming obviously from the same team, let alone the same country and whatever, and complements him really well because he can play the Moira and the Ana and the Zen. Now, Bilibili Gaming, they've done okay in Contenders China. They haven't won it, but they've constantly been in the top 4 last season. But the people who are dominating Contenders China at the moment are LG Huya. Now, LG Huya are the academy team of Chengdu Hunters, if you didn't know. There's a big gap to be closed there during 2020 if someone wants to knock Huya off their perch. Anyway, we're talking about the Hangzhou Spark. So I think this is 2 really good signings actually for the Hangzhou Spark, because that's 2 supports that could literally slide in for IDK and Bebe if they needed to. IDK and Bebe should be the starting supports for the Spark still though. I don't see why they would change that. The only problem I have with the Spark at the moment is they've currently only got 10 players, so obviously, as always, it's subject to change. But I think they lack a bit of depth in the tank role. Now, Sassin does have the ability to flex to the off-tank Roadhog Diva, as well as playing the projectile DPS. So that's possibly where the Hangzhou Spark are going down. But I would like to see them perhaps add 1, maybe even 2 more players, because we're obviously seeing a lot of teams lock in a very big roster going into the 2020 season. Sometimes some teams are maxing out their roster, like London Spitfire, and that's just because of the amount of travelling, and you're going to want squad depth to deal with things like burnout and possible injuries. So that's maybe one place that Hangzhou Spark could improve, but it's mostly staying stable and carrying on with what they had, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. They have lost 2 players though, and those are No Smite. No Smite has moved to the Paris Eternal, although No Smite really wasn't getting a look in over Gujue at the moment, so No Smite will be running out for the Paris Eternal next season, and Revenge, the support player, he is now with Runaway. Obviously, he made way so that they could bring Coldest and Mika in, and I'm not really surprised. If they've seen something they like in their academy at Bilibili Gaming, they're obviously going to want to promote it. Now, there is the elephant in the room, and this is Crystal, their DPS player, their Chinese DPS player. Now, He was suspended in August due to, he went on leave and then he didn't report back when he was meant to. There was a lack of communication, blah, blah, blah. And it all kind of broke down and he got suspended by the Spark for not fulfilling his contract. He is still suspended. He is still connected to the roster, but he is also still suspended, if you see what I mean. So it's kind of a very complicated situation with Crystal right now. Obviously, if Crystal was to return to the Hangzhou Spark roster at some point during this season, then the Sparks roster would be 11, not 10 right now. So we don't know what's happening there, and possibly that's a situation that the Spark would like to have cleared up before the start of the season. Although, maybe they are just trying to wait out the end of his contract and then just basically tell him on your bike. I don't know what the situation is with Crystal right now. It's all gone very quiet since it all blew up back then. So, again, Crystal could be one that we hear about later down the line. But moving on to their organisation, again, not much has changed. They have lost Supreme, their assistant coach, to the Washington Justice. He's gone to the Washington Justice to be a development coach. So that's a bit of a loss there. But they have moved in another assistant coach, Yeah. Now, Yeah has quite a bit of experience, actually. He was with the Florida Mayhem early last year. But he's also got experience from Lucky Future Zenith in China, but also Lunatic High. And, you know, if we know anything about Lunatic High, they're a decent team. I think we can all say that. Obviously not existing anymore, though. And that's a shame. But Hangzhou Spark, they've gone for this very stable roster going into the 2020 season. Now, I have reservations about that. And the reason I say this, you look at the teams below the Hangzhou Spark. Atlanta Reign have made some improvements, not massive improvements, but some improvements which could make them better going into this new season. Los Angeles Gladiators has definitely made improvements. We haven't got across to them yet, but they are coming up very soon. So are the London Spitfire. We don't know what to expect from the London Spitfire, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, I don't know. They could pop off, they could be absolute trash. The London Spitfire are the most difficult team to predict in the league right now. But they could surprise people. Seoul Dynasty have definitely improved. Guangzhou, you could argue for improvement, and so you could for Philadelphia as well. Shanghai Dragons have definitely improved. And then you look at the teams much, much lower in the league from last season, like the Dallas Fuel, like the Paris Eternal, like the Houston Outlaws, like perhaps even you could count the Florida Mayhem. These are teams that could be improved enough to start knocking on the Hangzhou Spark's door. Now, have Hangzhou Spark A, got the consistency, and A, got the improvement in the players they've got to push on a little bit further than they were last season and stay ahead of the pack that's chasing behind them? And this is the big question I have. And it's the key word here is stagnation. Has this Hangzhou Spark roster stagnated? Has it not improved enough to stay ahead of the likes of the Gladiators, the Reign, Dynasty, the Charge, maybe the Fusion, the Dragons? Or will it slip slightly this season and end up being perhaps a mid-table team? This is questions I'd like to see answered. Now, we did have the Shanghai Invitational back at the end of last year. Very early indications, but Hangzhou Spark didn't fare all that well in that competition. But neither did the Charge. So there's not too much you can take from that. The teams that fared very well in that competition were Shanghai and Chengdu, who are two people that will be chasing down the Guangzhou Charge and the Hangzhou Spark. So there's ifs and buts to everything, right? But I would worry about stagnation for the Hangzhou Spark this season. I'd like to be proved wrong. I very much like how the Hangzhou Spark play. I think they're a really good team, and I would like to see them do very well. They have the ability, but my question is, can they just push it that page further, that bit further, that will find them competing with the likes of Excelsior, Shock and Titans, rather than getting dragged back down by the likes of Gladiators, Reign, Dynasty, Charge, etc. That's the question I have for the Hangzhou Spark. The Hangzhou Spark will start out their season in Shanghai, where they will play the Seoul Dynasty and the Chengdu Hunters in Week 2 on Saturday, February the 15th. They then have a break in Week 3 and move on to Week 4, where they will play the Los Angeles Gladiators and the Dallas Fuel before they have to meet the current champion San Francisco Shock in Week 5. Now, that's actually a mixed bag to start off for the Hangzhou Spark, and it'll be a very interesting teller to see where this Spark team are at. If they can get 2 wins in the first week, then, or their first week anyway, then we're looking at a Hangzhou Spark who could definitely equal what they did last season, if not exceed what they did last season. If they can get wins over the Seoul Dynasty, who have obviously very much improved, and the Chengdu Hunters, who we already know are pretty good, and they're mainly the core of that Chinese roster that did so well at the Overwatch World Cup. And then we got Gladiators and the Fuel, which will be tellers as well. So the Hangzhou Spark have got an interesting start to the season. It's not an easy start to the season. It's not an enormously difficult start to this season. It's winnable for the Spark, if you want to say that. But then they have to hit people like the Titans and San Francisco Shock in the couple of weeks after the first 2 weeks. So, yeah, they need to get some wins on the board in the first 2 weeks, I would say, to keep that momentum going from the last season. That's what I would say, because they did very well in the playoffs, obviously. But that is going to be it for the team in pink. Next up, we are back in America, and we are with the Houston Outlaws. The Houston Outlaws is an interesting one because they've made a lot of changes in this off-season. There's a lot to talk about. There's the Cool Mat news story that we've got to talk about as well. And obviously the takeover that we saw at the end of last year that has made a big difference to the Outlaws. But the question is the budget there at the Outlaws to compete? They've certainly made some very good signings, but it still remains to be seen a bit about the budget with the Cool Mat story and all that. But we will go over that in the Houston Outlaws preview, which will be the next one. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then!